Hello, hello. So, second set of notes. Are you ready? It is in the Wiser Me worksheet. So, when appropriate, pause, um, fill in discussion questions. I hope you guys are enjoying those. Any feedback that you have about the videos or how this is going at any point, please let me know. Or if you have ideas in ways that I can be a little more engaging, happy to hear your suggestions. So, all right, having said that, let's start with the 8.2 notes. All right, so this is about reproduction. So, big picture here, we're talking about genetics and we're talking about meiosis. So, meiosis, it actually creates the sperm and egg cells. And if we're going to talk about genetics, we have to talk about how it's passed on to the next generation. The objective for this is number 4, and it's to talk about the sexual reproduction piece. We have to talk about maturity. If you remember all the way back to August, one of the characteristics of all living things is that they reach a point of maturity. And maturity is defined as the ability to create offspring. So for humans, this is puberty, when you become physically ready to create offspring. Doesn't have anything to do with whether you're um, mentally ready or socially and emotionally mature enough to have children. It's just talking about strictly biologically, are you able to create offspring? That's the kind of maturity that we're talking about. We're going to discuss the terms haploid and diploid, gametes, fertilization, and zygotes. Some of this may feel a little bit like health class, but it's important to understand exactly what's going on in order to pass the genes from one generation to the next. So that's my question. Pause the video and answer the Wiser Me question, the discussion about how genes are passed on to the next generation. All right, so genes are passed on to the next generation, either sexually or asexually. So we're going to focus on the sexual reproduction part. And there are 2 main cell types in your body. So another way to group cells, you have somatic cells, which are essentially all of the body cells that you have: skin cells, brain cells, bone cells, muscle cells. All of those are somatic, and they reproduce asexually through mitosis, which we talked about in the last unit. They have 2 sets of chromosomes, one from your mom and one from your dad. And these types of cells make up all of your body tissues, organs, again, brain cells, bone cells, fingernails, hair, everything involved with your body, except the sex cells. Sex cells are called gametes, and they are produced through the process of meiosis. So pause the video to write this down and then continue. All right, so introducing some new terms. I'm guessing that these are ones that you have not encountered before. So diploid versus haploid. The di means 2, and the haploid is 1. So what do we have 2 of, or 1 of, which is essentially what this means? We describe a cell as being haploid or diploid. So it's a descriptive term. If we describe a cell as being diploid, it means that it has 2 sets of chromosomes, or 2 copies of chromosomes, one from your mom and one from your dad. So all of the somatic cells, your normal body cells, are diploid. They have 2 sets of chromosomes. All right, these are those 23 pairs. If it's diploid, it has those pairs. Haploid means it only has one set. So instead of 23 pairs, it just has 23 chromosomes. And we call that haploid. My picture's over here. So a somatic cell, a body cell, has 2 copies of each chromosome. And you can see that here, one from your mom and one from your dad. The different colored bands on them represent the different alleles for a specific trait. In the gamete, the sex cell, we just have one copy of the chromosomes. And we only have one copy of the chromosomes because you got one set from your mom and one set from your dad over here. So in your body cells, you have one set from your mom and one set from your dad. Well, how did those 2 different sets get together? That's where we talk about the sperm cell has one set, 23, and the egg cell has the other set, 23, so that when they come together, the baby has the proper 2 sets of chromosomes. Now, there is a way that we designate this or describe it in shorthand. So a short way to label cells, especially in diagrams, you will see 2N, N meaning like number of chromosomes. So 2 times N, the normal number of chromosomes for whatever organism it may be. For us, it happens to be 23. So you can think of N as being like, it's kind of like an algebra. It's a variable. The number of chromosomes varies from organism to organism, so they just put the letter N in there to designate like a normal number of chromosomes. So diploid cells have 2 copies of the chromosomes. So we say 2N because it's the number of chromosomes times 2, or the set of chromosomes times 2, or just N, the number of chromosomes that are there. So you'll see this in diagrams, and I'll point this out. But 2N equals diploid because di means 2. Haploid is just one set, and it is designated in diagrams and pictures, and sometimes in text as N. So here's one of those diagrams. This one gives you a key, haploid being N, diploid 2N, just like we saw on the last slide. Now, because we're talking about humans, it tells you that the haploid gametes, N equals 23. So haploid is 23. It's those 23 unique chromosomes. And if we start off with the egg cell, it has 23 chromosomes, and the sperm cell has 23 chromosomes. So when the sperm cell and the egg cell get together, and I'm going to leave that to Mrs. Castro in your health class, but when the sperm cell and the egg cell get together, when they combine, it's called fertilization. So when the sperm cell enters the egg cell, we have fertilization. After fertilization, we call that initial cell that is now 2N or diploid, that fertilized cell is called a zygote. So at this point, the zygote is a single cell that has just combined an egg and a sperm cell. It's now called a zygote. It has the full 46 chromosomes necessary to develop into a human being. From here, the terms that we use after fertilization, we have a diploid zygote. That zygote will then start to go through mitosis and multiply and divide. When that mass of cells gets to a certain size, we start to call it an embryo. When that embryo continues to grow and divide, and it gets larger and more complex, we call it a fetus. And then on to a baby and the birth and delivery process. So if we follow this around, we have our zygote here. It's a single cell, one single cell that's been fertilized. So it's a sperm and an egg cell that have come together, and that's the zygote. It will go through mitosis, you see here, and it will develop. It will develop into an embryo and then into a fetus, depending on the complexity and the number of cells. After the individual is born, you're either biologically male or female, and you're multicellular, you're diploid because you still have two copies, right? This individual has copies from his mom and his dad. This individual has copies from her mom and her dad. And as they mature, so when you go through puberty and you reach maturity, then your body becomes able to reproduce. And for women, the ovaries have been going through meiosis to create egg cells. And for the males, at the point of puberty, that's when the testes start going through meiosis to create sperm cells. So in the ovaries or in the testes is where meiosis occurs. And this is the process that we're going to talk about in the next set of notes. So meiosis occurs either in the ovaries for women or in the testes for men. So meiosis produces the egg cells and the sperm cells. And then all of that magic that you talk about in health class can happen, and those sperm and egg cells can fuse, they fertilize, they create a zygote, which then grows into an embryo and develops into a fetus. And then you have a new person. So, things to watch out for on this diagram and to look at. And I would encourage you to pause the video and maybe screenshot this. Notice when in this process the cells are haploid, when during this process they're diploid. Make sure you know what fertilization means, zygote, diploid, meiosis, and again, meiosis we'll talk about in the next set of notes. All right, so that was it. This is a short one. I suggest you keep working on those outlines. Remember that you will upload those at the end of the unit, like we have done in the past. You'll also send me or upload your notes. So keep taking those notes, and I will see you next time. Again, email me if you have any questions or you need more information.